Hello, and welcome to the second video in a small series of economic training videos. My name is Ian McHugh. I am a student in Professor Stinard's macroeconomics class at Hudson Valley Community College. Today, I will be talking about the Cold War and the military-industrial complex as it relates to economics. In the years following the Second World War, the two great and powerful nations of the United States and the Soviet Union divided up what remained of the world. We must understand two things. The first is the timeline. The Cold War began at the end of the Second World War, when the United States dropped the first atomic bomb to end the war in the Pacific. Once the Warsaw Pact was signed by the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and the United States, the Cold War was on. The second thing to understand is that the Cold War was nothing more than a military arms race between the United States and its NATO allies, and the Soviet Union with its satellite nations. There are two types of warfare. The first is called passive war, and the second is aggressive war. Aggressive warfare is direct conflict. Passive warfare is a war that is never fought, but it is a heightened state, a readiness for war. The building up of armaments, which is exactly what was going on during the Cold War. In the years following the Second World War, there was a constant balance between the United States and the Soviets. Both had the bomb, and perhaps more importantly of all, both had the fear of the bomb trees as a fear mechanism to thwart the use of atomic bombs. In order to keep up with the rule of mutually assured destruction, there was a constant balancing act, which means in the United States and the Soviet Union, there was a growing industrial complex. Former American President Dwight D. Eisenhower, in his 1961 farewell address to the nation, gave warnings to this effect.
My fellow Americans, this evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government.
As the American military-industrial complex began, more and more jobs were created under the military banner. Let's have a look at this chart. The blue shows total military spending from 1946 to 2010. The red, however, shows our deficit. The first massive spike in the deficit was due to two reasons. The first was a recession in the early 1980s, and the second was due in part to American President Ronald Reagan and his famous Star Wars program. Star Wars was an anti-missile program from the 1980s, which was a last-ditch effort to outspend the Soviets. Now there is a problem with passive warfare. It is only sustainable for so long, and the communists in Russia were spending so much on armaments build-up that they neglected their citizens. In fact, it could be preserved that some of the reason the Cold War was able to go on as long as it did was because of the police actions and undeclared wars in Korea and Vietnam. Allow me to give you an example. This line in the Soviet Union was for toilet paper. The same factories, which made toilet paper, also made regular paper. Therefore, they had a daily quota of each, no more, no less. The relationships of the military-industrial build-up includes political contributions, political approval for defense spending, lobbying in support bureaucracies, and beneficial legislation and oversight of the industry. The amount of job created by a military industry creates a recurring cycle, which has a way of preventing the cycle from ever ending. The government creates jobs to build up the military, the economy becomes a passive wartime economy, it flourishes. Since the private sector is helping to maintain the military's needs, it never wants an end to the passive wartime economy. The entire network of contracts and flows of money and resources among individuals as well as institutions of the defense contractors, the Pentagon, and the Congress and executive branch. This sector is intrinsically prone to principal agent problem, moral hazard, and rent-seeking. Cases of political corruption have also surfaced with regularity. In this aspect, moral hazard, which is a situation in which a party makes a decision about how much risk to take, while another party bears the costs if things go badly, and the party insulated from risk behaves differently from how it would if it were fully exposed to the risk. In this case, the Pentagon and Congress make the decision about how much risk to take by going through private sector contracts. The private sector, companies like today's Lockheed Martin, bears the front of the risk by investing time, money, and resources into the contracts. The private companies run the risk of being contracted out without ever being paid, if in the future during the middle of their contract, the federal government decides to cut funding for those programs. I would like to thank you for watching this video, and please have a nice day.